Hello and welcome to Sim.bc, where it is 15:20, it's just 20 past 3 in the afternoon. Today we're going to go through what I've done during the week, the project I've had, and what project am I talking about? Well, I am obviously talking about Hofstede's 6 dimensions, the way of going through it in the way we did. Was it something that we can improve? Was it something that was bad? Was it something that I felt that I have personally learned of this experience? Why? Why not? And could this be something that will be continued going into the future? Without any further ado, let's get into it. So then, talking about the pros. The pros are standardized procedure, and I'm just going to read off my list here. Knowing what to do the next day, visual cue on the screen, structure, experiences, learning how to edit better, even if it don't necessarily show. But I've really learned how to edit better, at least in my own opinion. I've increased my own, my own manner of expertise. I've increased my expertise in my own way. So, starting with the first one, standardized procedure. And with that I mean, I know what I'm going to do each and every day. And I know I'm going to talk about dimensions, so I can standardize that in a bit. I know I'm going to start with the definition, moving over to the country example, and then talking about my own experiences. Since I already know that, I can think about it the day before I'm going to record. How am I going to go about this? Why am I going to go about it in the way I am going to do it? That sounded really weird. But it is really amazing to have that structure laid out for you before you start doing it. So why am I doing it? How am I going to go about it? And why am I going to go about it in the way that I will? What kind of experience am I going to relate to this? What experience best fits this? And that's something that is very different. For instance, I can say, I have lots of experience with cultural clashes, but of all of these, which one best defines this dimension and how can I relate to it? So for instance, I had one good going from Sweden to France, and there are lots of different cultural clashes there, but I really try to pull from more of my experiences to make it a bit more interacting, a bit more fun, not interactive, but a bit more fun for you as a viewer to understand he does not only have this Sweden to France kind of thing. That Sweden to France culture class has also been to other places in the world, and it was really fun for me to relive and re-explore those experiences with you guys and trying to relate into the different cultures, like the different cultural clashes and the different dimensions. So, knowing what to do the next day, kind of touched upon it already, but knowing what to do the next day might seem underwhelming, but it's actually kind of nice. So, for instance, the first 60 episodes I did, I knew that I have lots of stuff I want to talk about. I have lots of topics that I think are very interesting. But in what particular order I'm going to talk about these, that was a bit unclear, because some days I just felt like I really want to talk about this. Well, then why shouldn't I? And because of the nature of that structural approach, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to talk about the very next day. Once here, I did not only know I was going to talk about the dimension the next day, I also knew kind of which dimension. It was the original 4 in the beginning, and then it was the 5th one, then it was the 6th one, then today it is the review. That was really nice, because it felt like more of a job. And some people are going to be like, what? You think that's a positive? That it felt more like a job? Isn't the entire point here that you don't need to go to work and you don't need to work? But of course I see this as a part of a job and as a part of a very, an extensive hobby that I really like to put in the effort to, and it's really nice to have this part of it, like this kind of schedule going forward. The visual cue in the screen is also something that I've learned, and a pro that I've taken out from this experience, and that is having something here. When I'm talking about a topic, what am I actually talking about? And that might sound really strange for people, because many people are going to be like, well, we know from the topic, like from the title of the video, what the video is going to be about. Well, sure, that's all fine and dandy, but if you have seen 6 videos in reverse chronological order due to the nature of how they're added in the playlist, then you're not perhaps going to know which dimension is he talking about right now. I've heard lots of definitions and I know he's talking about all of them, but which one is it right now? And there's where the visual cue comes in, because even though I mentioned it in the beginning of the video, it might be hard for you to realize, oh, it's not power distance, oh yeah, that was 10 minutes ago. You know what I mean? So that visual cue I thought was really amazing to have, and it's something that I think I toyed around with when I was talking about retaining an audience in the World of Warcraft Classic Vanilla server discussion as well. You know, Blizzard, woo! Going over to the next is structure, and yet again this is kind of the same thing as the standardized procedure. I know how I was going to make the post-production part. I knew which pictures I needed, I knew which sort of visual cue I wanted, I knew which kind of how long it was going to be on average, and that was really amazing, was really great. And yet again, this day-to-day experience, the experiences, really deep diving, those will come in what I've learned really, and learning how to edit better. And it might not show, but I really felt like, oh, I really gained some knowledge about how to work in iMovie and how to work in probably, what should I say, related programs, because there were some short commands I did learn to use, like Shift Command S is like you're splitting a thing. Well, it doesn't really matter, but I found out some shortcuts in my editing process which decreased the amount of time it took to edit those videos, which was really nice. So then we're going to move into cons. So speaking about the cons, not being able to talk about whatever I want and had to talk about the dimensions. Those are kind of the same thing, but I'm going to explain it. Well, as I said before, the good thing with this is that I had structure. I knew I was going to talk about the dimension, I kind of knew which dimension I was going to talk about, and I knew how to go about it. Now, the problem is that I was kind of locked to this position as well, because I knew that I'm going to talk about this the upcoming 6 days. Which, as I said, is a pro. It's nice to know what you're going to do. But simultaneously, if I find something that I thought was really interesting and I was like, I want to make a video about this, I want to throw this out, I want to discuss this. Like for instance, when I'm going through the different dimensions, how do they all connect? Why do they all connect? And I'm also talking about this critique towards Hosfstede. Maybe I want to deep dive into that critique, but I couldn't because I knew I needed to go through the dimensions as well. So I felt kind of locked in my creative approach. I didn't have the creative power anymore in the same sense, because I knew I was working on a schedule. Now, even though the efficiency increased and I really felt like this is good when I worked with the schedule, but it was kind of the same time I was kind of feel locked in doing the dimensions, and that was the main con of this project. But what have I learned then? Well, really learning the dimensions myself, I must add, because I've been looking at all of these dimensions for years now. I mean, I've studied this in university for years. I've been at university for years, and I know it's just 2.5 years, but that's still plural, so I'm still gonna say it. But actually not only looking at the dimensions, but really trying to understand them so that I can talk about them with you guys. What is actually uncertainty avoidance? What actually is power distance? How is the definition? How does the definition change in comparison to my own experience when I apply it to this definition and this dimension? Really trying to deep dive into the meat and potatoes of what it's actually like. And that was a real learning experience for me. Another thing I learned was how to edit better. I kind of went over that in the pros, but yeah, that was a learning experience for me. Combining the different dimensions, also something I learned. Something I would like to deep dive in a different video at some point, but really seeing when I'm working through all these dimensions, and I'm always constantly thinking about these dimensions because the structure, knowing what to do the next day. And since I went through these 6 days, but I also had the time to, I had a leeway, I had a downtime between when I was recording videos, obviously, because I'm recording one per day. I had the time to really reflect on what was I talking about yesterday, what am I going to talk about today, what am I going to talk about tomorrow. Oh, does all of these connect? And as you can see in some of the videos, I really tried to find a connection when I showed all of the countries beside each other and said that, oh, uncertainty avoidance is high, that perhaps means that masculinity is high. But then yet again, we had some countries where that wasn't the case. So it was quite interesting to see that in some countries you can see this, what should we say, this link, this connection, while if you're introducing a third country, it's all skewed up and all screwed. But I'm wondering, if you take all of them into consideration, are there some dimensions that are more interconnected? And I felt like I was going through that a bit on my own and really getting a deeper and better understanding about it, and that I felt was really nice. Now, the last one is working with a schedule. Yet again, kind of going back to structure. Oh, I missed one here. Working with schedule is probably, yeah, it's going to be on the pro. And experience is going to be here. Yeah, that was what I did wrong. Now, the experiences, really deep diving into my own experiences. As I said, I want to pull bits and pieces because I have all of these experiences. Why just discussing the cultural clash between Sweden and France when I can discuss the cultural clashes that I have experienced in Russia, in the US, in the UK, in Turkey, in Greece, and all over Europe basically? Why do I have to limit myself to Sweden and France, even though I always talked about Sweden and France and I always had those in the video? I really got to revisit these experiences and understand that, oh, this is how I can apply these experiences, this is how I can use these experiences in a constructive way, in a manner that is both learning, like it adds the learning to you guys, and it adds the, what should I say, the embodiment of the definitions. Why is it different from the definition? How am I interpreting my own experiences with the country examples? Am I the individual in the country who is feeling more in part with another type of the spectrum? Am I more uncertainty avoidant than the rest of the people in Sweden, or why not? And really going through these experiences and realizing, oh, I've actually done so much in my life, and well, that sounded so, what should we say, narcissistic. I've done a lot of things, and to be able to revisit them and combining what I have actually done in my leisure time with a thing I've learned in college and university, that was really cool to like connect those things so that it actually went hand in hand, what I'm actually doing and what I'm learning at the same time. So that was amazing to go through, and that was a real learning experience for me. So going into the last bit then, was it good, was it bad, and will I keep doing this in the future? I would say overwhelming, well, even though the call was kind of big, because I felt like I really want to talk about this today, but I couldn't. The pros still outweigh the cons, so to say. The pros are way better. So I would say, was it good? Yes, it was an overall good experience. I worked with structure, I worked with a day-to-day basis. Well, I'm doing a day-to-day basis, but a day-to-day basis when I knew what was coming up. Yet again, the structural implies. So I thought it was really good, this approach to this project. So it was a nice pilot project, so to say. And will I keep doing this in the future? Well, if it makes sense. Let me say it like that. If it makes sense, I will do this in the future, because as I said, I really like the format. It was really nice going into having a structure before I went in, knowing that, oh, this is how I discussed it yesterday, this is how I can apply it today, this is the changes I can make to make it better, this is something that was worse, that this is something that worked, this is something that didn't work. Things like that. So yeah, I would do this in the future if I think that it makes sense. For instance, a step-by-step model maybe needs a few days to go through, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe I don't have enough experience to talk about. For instance, if we take Maslow's pyramid, the 5 steps there, will I make a 5-day video about that, like 1 step per day, or do I think it's enough to just go through the entire pyramid in one sitting? Depends. Will I try to explore this approach in 2-day videos, so making one video one day, for instance, about 3 of the steps in Maslow's pyramid, and then making the 2 other steps in the day after? Will I divide it in that way? I don't know yet, but I will say, if it makes sense, definitely. I really liked it. As I said, the pros outweighs the cons, and the con can be a pro, because if I'm feeling very strongly about the topic and about the subject, and I feel like I really want to discuss this, but I have to discuss something else, I can either make a bonus video about it, or I can write it down, and then I have another topic to discuss another day, which is also great. So, rounding out this experience then, it was good. There were many cons, a few pros, a few cons, but they can be interpreted as pros if you want to. I learned a lot, both about editing and my own experiences and my own personal relation to these dimensions, and how I am in relation to Sweden and France. Where do I feel mostly at home? Kind of interesting as well. And will I keep doing this in the future? As I said, it depends. Without any further ado, it sounds like I'm going to go into something else. Now, I'll see you tomorrow, mates, with a new interesting topic about business. So, see you, mates, and yeah, I felt this was really good overall. Have a good one.